What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me as always, Shannon. Shannon, how was your weekend? I hope you had a good Mother's Day weekend. Everything go well with the wife?
Oh yes, we had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. We had family come in from Charlotte, and so we spent most of the day Saturday with them, and then Sunday, of course, was to spend. We spent with my mom and my wife, and uh, I've truly been blessed with two incredible ladies, and just very thankful and praise the Lord for all the blessings. We just had a wonderful time, and um, so I hope you and yours did as well.
Yeah, we did. It was a really good time. It was my daughter's birthday weekend, so my mom got to come in. We got to celebrate a little bit there, and then yesterday celebrate Mother's Day with my in-laws, and so it was a family fun filled weekend. I
She's a
enjoyed it.
big two now, big two.
Big two, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
and she's something else, man. She's getting so tall. You know, we measure every 2 months, and she grew another inch in the last 2 months, and so she's getting up there. But enough of that. I hope. Well, first and foremost, I hope everybody that's tuning in, moms around the world, I hope you had a safe and happy Mother's Day, and well wishes to all of you guys. Now, title of today's show is "Are the Steelers cheap?" Now, the reason behind it is apparently Beanie Bishop and Peyton Wilson did some sort of podcast or something together, and there was a clip going around talking about how they were talking about the quarterback position, how they don't know who the quarterback is going to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then they go into saying that they, truly don't know things and that the Steelers want to stack years. And George Pickens had a comment saying something about they don't want to stack anything, they're cheap, and that they're gone as soon as they can. And I'm paraphrasing because there was some verbiage that can't be repeated. Um, Obviously, George Pickens blamed it on AI. It wasn't him. It was AI. But what do you think, first and foremost? I mean, does this kind of make you feel a little bit okay, the fact that the Steelers got rid of the guy?
Oh, I was okay with it already. I'd been okay with moving on from him.
Mhm.
Uh, now, now my podcast partner, one of my other podcast partners, Big G, he was very upset with the timing. But as we talked about last week on Pump Your Brakes, nobody was offering the Steelers a third rounder before the draft. After the draft, need arises. People realize, well, we didn't get the receiver we needed or we wanted, or we didn't have the offensive draft that we needed. So they say, well, I'm more willing to give up that third round guy now. So the Steelers got a third round pick for a guy that was never going to live up to his athleticism and his potential with production. I do not believe, because I do not believe the character and the work ethic is there. Some guys, mature differently, and anything can happen, but I just don't see it happening with the Steelers. So I'm more than fine with that. My problem was with that comment that the Steelers are cheap. Now let's remember, in the NFL, there's a salary cap, and the Steelers are up against the salary cap every year. Now that they no longer have Ben Roethlisberger and a few of the high priced talent on offense, last year I think they had the lowest paid offense in the NFL, and that means they were incredibly top heavy. That they have the highest paid defense in the NFL. Now that needs to be balanced out, obviously, because you can't have all your money on one side. But to say that the Steelers are cheap is just, that's not accurate, because they're always up against the cap when they have talent there. And he said that because the Steelers do not want to make a long-term investment in somebody that has the emotional maturity of a 6-year-old.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Let me read a couple of things that Mark Caboli put out there as far as why the Pittsburgh Steelers may have traded him. He put on there significant locker room guys got fed up with Pickens' antics and quickly got turned off by him for multiple reasons. Some felt it was counterproductive to keep him around. Even with his unique talent, they felt that the locker room could turn toxic. Not many teams were interested in trading for Pickens, making it difficult for the Steelers to get market value. Steelers wouldn't trade him for less than anything of a third round pick, something that wasn't offered until the draft. Now I understand, getting rid of him and not many people calling and stuff, but I do think, as you mentioned, need played a role into why the Dallas Cowboys went ahead and ponied up the third round pick. I'm just saying too, man. I kind of agree with your co-host there. If they would have waited a little bit longer, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to go down with an injury. There's going to be something, and somebody's going to look at him and say, "Hey, maybe we'll give him a chance. Maybe it's not a third round. Maybe it's even higher. Maybe it's a better team that you would expect to get a higher pick from." I mean, I'm not expecting Dallas to do a lot of great things, and I don't think George Pickens puts them over the top by any means. But I don't see them also picking in the top 10 of this draft either. So, yeah, I kind of understand the timing behind it. It appears that George Pickens wasn't asking for a trade, but other reports have come out that there was a lot of antics, a lot more than what we know about, including running late to games, running late for meetings and practices. Everybody saw what was going on the field, off the field, in stadium games, after the whistle, those type of things that were hurting the team. So, I am finally coming around to this trade. I'll be honest with you, Shannon. I wasn't too thrilled with George Pickens being traded. I had already had visions of DK on one side and George Pickens on the other, and what they were going to be able to do to defenses and how defenses were going to be able to react. But I guess you can't be too toxic for a team, and the Steelers needed to do right for them. You know what I mean?
Well, I had the same dreams that you did. I could have seen that, and playing out. But we got to remember, every time I would try to have that dream, I would have a touch of reality. The nightmare come up of, DK got 8 balls this week and I only got 2. And, teams knowing, as we seen the season go on last year, that he's a hothead and they could get him out of his game by getting physical with him and talking trash. And then he wants to fight and he loses focus and he stops on routes and he drops balls and all the other crap that I'm not going to miss. Hopefully everybody's paid attention to the rookie session they had there, a little rookie camp last weekend, and listen to the guys, the new draft picks, and listen to them talk and how excited they are to be Pittsburgh Steelers and their character, the way they conduct themselves, the way how articulate they are. It's a different group of guys. We're starting to see that out of these last few drafts. Guys who want to be there, want to contribute to a winner, want to be a team player, are not concerned about brand. The only brand they're concerned about is the Pittsburgh Steelers brand and getting number 7, getting to that next championship. They're making a conscious effort to change. Also, they're making a conscious effort to build the foundations, the offensive and defensive line. They're building a conscious effort to rebuild this running game. That is, even though they ran it a lot last year, they were not effective. Their per average rush was near the bottom. And that's not acceptable. You have to build, and they're really committing this offseason to building the rushing attack and fully committing to it to where you can be successful playing small ball, playing time of possession football, and smart, protect the football, ball security. They're really committing to that. So you don't have to have the superstar quarterback, but when you do find one, there's a rumor going around that there's a big announcement tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And everybody's talking about what could that announcement be. Now, you know what everybody's guessing, and I'm not even going to say it. But, if something like that happens, you can change maybe your outlook of what this season could be. But we got to remember, 1, they're committing to the trenches, and 2, there's still time for them to bring in another receiver if they deem it necessary.
The only problem I have with the whole receiver thing and bringing in one in is the Steelers were in this exact same position around this same time last year. They knew they needed another wide
Yes.
receiver,
Mm-hmm.
and they went through and granted they tried. They had opportunities. They were going to get what's his name, Christian Kirk, and he ended up breaking his collarbone or something like that.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk chose to stay in San Francisco for whatever reason. You know, some might say because of the money. He wanted more than $28 million. Kind of goes back to the cheap thing. But I digress. They weren't able to do it last year. Do you think the Steelers will do it this year? Do you think that they're willing to pay up what it takes to go out there and get another wide receiver? Because I think they need to bring in somebody. I know they're talking about Roman Wilson doing some good things and Calvin Austin, but to me, those guys are slot receivers, and they're not that true, X or that outside wide receiver. And I think they still need that on this team. Woods isn't going to be able to do that for them. I know they have a lot of draft picks for next year, and so maybe perhaps they have the possibility of trading somebody throughout this year. And I know that the offseason is a long offseason still. Training camp is pretty long. Players are going to get cut for financial reasons and other things. Rookies are going to come up and make other players expendable, so to speak. So I understand it's a waiting game to a certain extent, but do you think the Steelers are going to actually be able to do it this year? How confident are you that they're going to do it, or are you still worried that come week one, this is what we're going to see for wide receivers in the room?
I don't think they're in a rush to do it. Last year, teams just wanted too much. They wanted too much for the guys, and thankfully they didn't trade for Ayuk because he got hurt, missed the majority of the season. Now he might not have Pittsburgh, we don't know, but I'm more than happy with DK Metcalf. So we see they are willing to make a big trade and then pay the guy that they bring in. So there goes the cheap thing out the window. Because what are they paying Metcalf, 30 mil? I think it was
33 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm really excited about Metcalf. I would like to see them add another receiver, and I think they will. I don't want another Williams like last year. That was right before the deadline, and they pulled the trigger, and it really wasn't adding much. But I think there's guys like Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen is a veteran that could come in at that wide receiver too and give them that reliable third down guy, a crafty guy, a guy that's physical, will block, and I think that, for the right price, you can do that. Now, a trade, I'm all for it. If you can get a guy like Dobbs from Green Bay or I think his name's Wilkins. They have a couple guys in Green Bay that I would like to see them maybe make a move for and offer a third rounder and see what you can get. But I just think that Colin is focusing on more than just that talent at that position. He's focusing on fit, meaning culture fit and character fit. And he also is not going to overpay. So if the right opportunity arises, I believe that he'll pull the trigger. But it wouldn't shock me if it's a guy like Keenan Allen.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, what would you give up a fourth for Ayuk and take on that contract he just got? It's not, what is it, like 27 million, somewhere around there? 28 million is what he settled on. It sounds okay now with what receivers are getting, especially like with what they paid just recently to like the likes of Jamar Chase, Higgins, and things of that nature. But we don't know what he has post injury, so they might be looking for some draft picks out there in San Francisco. Would you be willing to give up a fourth or a third round for Brandon Ayuk this year?
No, I'm not interested in Ayuk until he shows that he's fully recovered from that ACL. I don't want to take on that salary for a guy that might never be the same. I didn't want him before he got hurt for the amount of money he wanted, and I definitely don't now. I wanted Deebo Samuel 3 years ago, but Deebo is not the same. We've seen over the last 2 years, even in that offense with all them weapons. So he doesn't move the same. His mobility is not what it once was. If you're going to trade, I want him to trade for, like I said, one of the young Green Bay guys, DJ Moore, I think, from the Bears. Some guys like that. If you're going to look at a trade, get a young guy that could grow with this roster, or sign a guy like Keenan Allen, who's a veteran, who's savvy, and you could get on a 1-year deal at a much cheaper rate. There's no reason to overpay in draft capital or per year with the situation as it is right now, because they still don't even know who the quarterback's going to be.
Right. And that boils the question too about the cheap part. Do you think that if the Steelers weren't so cheap, they would have a quarterback problem?
Well, they obviously didn't like Justin Fields as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
I seen Justin Fields being a cheaper version of Jalen Hurts, and I wanted to see the Steelers with all the inside knowledge of team building, how that Waddle is kind of building the Steelers, Connor Waddle in the image like Rosenberg is with the Eagles. And I thought that Justin Fields was that guy that could really emulate many of the same attributes that Jalen Hurts provides the Eagles. But they didn't want to pay that, I guess. I don't know if it come down to money, if it's the cheap, or if it just come down that they didn't believe that he was going to be able to progress to that next step in his progressions and ability to make plays consistently and accurately down the field. But I mean, I would have liked to have seen them bring Fields back for the continuity and the fact he was another year in Arthur Smith's offense. Because whoever they get now is going to be year one again. You see? So that was my main thing, is I would have liked to see Justin return.
Yeah, I wouldn't have, hated Justin or even Russell returning to a certain extent. If George Pickens was as bad as people are claiming, and he wasn't running routes right, he was running the wrong routes, he was taking plays off. Yeah, he wouldn't run them. I mean, there was times that a lot of us questioned why he wasn't on the field, probably because of that. There was times where Russell looked good, against Cincinnati and stuff. Mm-hmm. He has a connection with DK Metcalf. He was willing to come back. He's bought in. Now, I know he doesn't throw over the middle of the field, and I probably I was ready to move off from him. But if the big issue was George Pickens, why move off of Russell Wilson and be in this purgatory of quarterback realm?
I really don't think that the Steelers, from Tomlin to the front office, I mean, Russell Wilson is not a bad dude. He is a good guy. I mean, we just look at all the stuff he does off the field for charity at the children's hospitals. I think he has a big heart. I like the guy. That is not the problem. I think that some guys fit with certain organizations better than others. And I do not feel like that he was a great fit for the Steelers. And it really didn't come to light until you've seen they did not have the talent needed to compete in those last 5 weeks. Now, that wasn't all Wilson's fault. They did not have the talent on offense. They had one good receiver, and that was questionable because of his effort, and that being Pickens. We know Freiermuth had some big drops down the stretch. Let's not forget the end of the Bengals game. Had he have caught that ball, they'd at least had a chance for a long field goal. So, we got to remember, it wasn't just Pickens. It wasn't just Wilson. It was they lacked talent across the board. Harris was a terrible fit for the outside zone running attack. The offensive line got weaker, and guys like McCormick wore down, being a rookie in his first experience chasing a playoff position. And he that was some of his worst football at the end of the year. So, but I just do not think Wilson was, when they seen the end of the year, I do not think Wilson was in their long-term plans at all.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think he was a long-term idea. it did sound like the Steelers were interested in him, potentially signing him an extension for a couple of years if he played well. And, I'm just thinking with all the issues that you're talking about outside of the quarterback position, and yet he was still willing to or able to get the team into the playoffs. I know he had quite a bit of help with Justin Fields going 4-2 in the early part of the season, but against those same teams, I don't really think that Russell Wilson was going to play too fairly different. I don't think he's going to go into those same 6 games and come out less than 4-2. I think maybe there's one game I think there that Justin kind of took over with his legs. That he would have. That game was Justin Fields' game. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was, but I do remember he took control with his legs.
I know he did a lot in the Indianapolis game when they come back.
Yeah, that's true.
Of course, they ended up losing, but he did lead them back in that game because of his mobility.
Exactly, and so, I don't know. You hear all these different problems around the quarterback. It's kind of hard to blame the quarterback then. If you have those problems, you have a running back that's not running through the holes. You have an offensive line that's, kind of going down. You have a receiver who's not running the right routes, and that's your lead receiver. And he's not showing up for showing up late for games and things of that nature. And so, I don't know how many quarterbacks would have been successful in that scenario, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, that's totally true. And you also got to look at it as the lowest paid offense in the NFL. We cannot get past that. We got to remember, you get what you pay for, and they do not pay, or they have not been paying their offense. And when they had the great offense with the Killer Bees, guess who had one of the lowest paid defenses in the NFL? I mean, so the Steelers have got to figure out a way to balance. But the problem is bad drafts, really bad drafting from 15 up. It catches up with you. You the only way you're bringing in new talent that's around for more than a year is in free agency. And the Steelers have never been big spenders there. So I think the Steelers have they know what the problem is now, and now they're trying to fix it.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it. I mean, and I think they've identified character being a big issue, because it seems like the players that they've moved on from have had some character issues or some issues being a team player, so to speak. Well, we're going to take our break real quick. We'll be right back after a few words. If you're watching this live, we're not going anywhere. We'll see you here in a couple minutes. And we're back. We're back, guys. Welcome back to the show. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check it out once you're done listening to us. While you're there, you can check out all the audio-only podcasts, which include mine, State of the Steelers, that airs out on Saturdays at about 11 a.m. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you guys go and check it out. Big Pun had brought up a question. He goes, my question is, if George Pickens was acting up so bad, why did Tomlin keep playing him? I would say when that's all you got, that's what you got. You know what I'm saying?
Who else?
I mean, the antics are there. I think somebody put down that over the last last season, the Steelers have gotten rid of like 10 starters, offense and defense. So big changes have happened.
Yes,
the big changes, and that's offense and defense. I'm assuming we're all going to assume that there's going to be some more changes coming, because the quarterback position hasn't been fully filled. You mentioned that there's going to be supposedly a big announcement tomorrow. It might happen, it might not. If it does, do you think he's signing for more than $20 million?
I would sure hope not. After making all that statement about, I'll play for 10 million. It ain't about the money. Blah blah blah. That would really. I mean, it better be a 1 year deal. All I will say, it better be a 1 year deal.
Mhm.
Because if the Steelers get stuck on the hook for more than 1 year and then having to lose money in the future, because he's 41, guys. You know how many quarterbacks have been real effective after that age? His name is his initials are TB.
Terry Bradshaw.
Other than that, it ain't out there hardly. So we'll see. But I hope that if that is the case, and I ain't even saying the name, then I hope it's less than 20 mil.
I think that even though he said he'd play for less than 10, I'm going to make a prediction that it's 25. I think it's 25. I think the Steelers are going to pay him more than they paid Russell Wilson. And I think that, and I mentioned it before, he talked on the Pat McAfee show. He's got some personal things going on, and that he's in a new relationship. He has a dog, and he's got, some things he's working out. And I was like, he's got some trip planned. He's got a trip planned with his new boo. And I think he's been seen at the Kentucky Derby with a wedding ring now. And so all the newest rumors, which have been debunked, was that he was at a golf course or signing up at a golf course in a local area, Pittsburgh, which have been debunked. If he is signed tomorrow, how do you think that announcement's coming out?
Well, we've talked about it so much about, it's going to be on the Pat McAfee show. It's going to be when Pat McAfee did his show in Pittsburgh. It's going to be, so I would think he would want Pat McAfee to break it, to be the first to get it out there. But like I said, I just, there's been talk about when the schedule, because there's going on Wednesday, there's going to be so much focus on the schedule. I wouldn't think this is tomorrow. Everybody's saying on Tuesday there's going to be this big announcement. So I don't think it's him, because I think he'd want it to be on Wednesday, that he would get all that coverage. If it is an ego thing like it appears to be, that he would get talked about even more if it's on Wednesday. Because Wednesday, the NFL is going to be front and center to everything.
What would your thought of him be if it was just a press conference with the Pittsburgh Steelers media, and it wasn't some explosive or extravagant thing on Pat McAfee? If it was just business as usual, comes in and talks, do you think that would align better with the fans of Pittsburgh, or those that maybe perhaps have a certain idea of Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I think it would be more professional, in my opinion. I mean, after everything that this delay and having to wait, and to me, it would show he was more serious, and he was going to be fully committed this year to being a part of the team and help build the franchise, be successful this season, and not just be so much of a publicity tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm assuming he's not going to be pulling up in the Malibu like he was last time he was around. I think he's going to want everybody to know he's in town. So, yeah, I don't know if he's signing tomorrow or not. Stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, so that you guys know, because we're going to break that. That's going to be some breaking news if he ends up signing, and you're going to hear it first here after Adam Schefter or whoever announces it. Once that goes out there, you're going to hear about that news here in the breakdown. I think that a lot of people who dislike him or dislike the idea of Aaron Rodgers coming are going to start to fall more towards the idea of, like, all right, it's okay, let's go, right? As soon as he signs, once the drama is over, I think a lot of people are going to start to come more towards the idea of having Aaron Rodgers on there. I think that the Steelers talk about wanting to win a Super Bowl and this, that, and the third. And I think that's one way that they're trying, a way of telling the fans that they're not going to give up on this year. They're not punting. They're going to go all in. I mean, I don't think you sign a 40-year-old quarterback like that. I mean, just to tank or whatnot. If that was the case, just go with Mason and Will. You know what I'm saying? And so that's where I'm at on that one.
Hey, John Caldwell, I mean, said Will Allen better than Aaron Rodgers. And I got to say this, not just to John, but I don't know if you've been watching and listening. Now, we haven't seen him play even in camp yet. We haven't seen him perform at all. I'm just going by the way he carries himself, the way his intellect, his knowledge of the game, his commitment. They said right after he was drafted, he asked for them to send him a copy of the playbook. That's not a guy that wants to party and celebrate all night that I just made it to the NFL. That's a guy that's wanting to be an NFL player and is willing to commit and do what is necessary to become an NFL player, whether it's a backup, a starter, whatever it may be. I love the kid's attitude. I love his intellect. I just think that the more you look at him and what he did at Ohio State, I think he will fit very well into the Steelers offense. And I ain't saying he's going to be the starter this year or anything else, but I am very intrigued to see him at camp and in the preseason because I want to see if his skill set does translate to the NFL and to the Steelers offense they want to run. Because, see, I watched him at Kansas State. And the guy is a big man, but he's got wheels. I don't know if you've seen him run, but he runs for a lot of first downs. And he gets away from pressure. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson. You just got to be able to maneuver in the pocket and have that feel. And I think he does. And it would not shock me for him to, I'd say he's will be the next franchise guy, but it would not shock me to see him start a game at some point in his Steeler career.
Yeah, I strongly suspect that, he might. I don't know about this year. I think that he's definitely going to be behind Mason Rudolph on the depth chart. He's going to be buried there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I don't see him surpassing Mason. Now, I think that if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign, or if Aaron Rodgers goes to the New Orleans Saints, which has been a big rumor now because Derek Carr's retired or retiring, that maybe Aaron Rodgers is transitioning to a different black and gold and going down to New Orleans. I do think that there would be then at that point a much higher possibility for him to start a game this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like.
Did you see Adam Schefter today?
What did he say?
He said that the only two possibilities right now for Aaron Rodgers is retirement or the Steelers, because what he says the Saints are not interested. Now that could change, but even though Derek Carr announced his retirement, supposedly the Saints told him that they're not interested.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like a lot of teams weren't. It sounded like Aaron Rodgers was reaching out to a few teams as well.
Yeah,
it was not the other way around. Typically, it's the other way. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's some humility that takes precedent there when so many teams are denying you, or that you're having to reach out to say, "Hey, do you guys want my services?" It's like applying for a job almost. It's something that he hasn't had to do for a long time, where he's looking and telling people, "Hey, I'm should be what's best for your organization," and maybe that'll humble him a little bit, and maybe perhaps that'll translate onto the field, or to a better leader or something.
Do you think that the Steelers, maybe he's thinking, if I'm going to play, I want to play for a team I think can win the Super Bowl. And maybe, you think if the Steelers knew that, they wouldn't have traded Pickens, because they would want Metcalf and Pickens to team with Rodgers.
Yeah.
So to me, them trading Pickens, either he was that big a headache, or they realized that they're not one guy away from the Super Bowl, and they were willing to trade him with or without Rodgers. Or the Steelers might be very committed and very confident that they'll be able to bring in a quality number 2 guy. in my opinion, it's either or.
I think it's probably a combination of a few things. I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers himself was like, I don't. I'd rather have a different type of wide receiver that's gonna, listen to him and be in the right place in the right position. Aaron Rodgers wasn't he wasn't shy for throwing anybody under the bus if they weren't in the wrong position. Ask Mike
That's
Williams.
true. It's true. Yeah.
And Mike Williams didn't play a lot, after that. And so you could be very talented. You could have all these skills and a high skill set. But if the guy throwing you the ball don't trust you, and he'd rather have somebody out there that he can trust to be in the right place or do the right thing, or even be the right decoy so that when he is throwing the ball, he's not getting intercepted like when Russell Wilson got picked off against the Chiefs in Christmas. Those type of situations, is it possible that maybe perhaps in those conversations with Aaron, he's like, hey, I want a receiver who's going to be all in, a guy like such and such, because it's not been uncommon for him to throw out some names to get certain players on his team. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of that going on in this scenario as well. What do you think?
Oh, I'm sure, because there's guys that would like to play with Aaron again. And some of the people was talking about Lazard, wanting to, if the Steelers do get Rodgers, they might look at him. But I just think that I'm fine. I'll be honest. I'm fine with Rudolph and Howard and really focusing on offensive efficiency, establishing the running game, developing the line, and working a lot of play action off of that. Having a game manager at quarterback, I think Rudolph and maybe eventually Howard can do that. And again, revisit the quarterback situation next year. But again, I'm okay with the year that they don't necessarily make the playoffs or they don't have a winning record. I'm not concerned about that. I'm looking more to getting relevant again. And they're really not relevant. They're always slightly above average, but that doesn't mean you're relevant.
I get what you're saying, but do you think that maybe perhaps it could be dangerous for some of the players to have that mindset as well? Like, for instance, Peyton Wilson and Beanie Bishop, back to the top of the show where we were talking about go full circle here.
Mm-hmm.
What they were referencing was that the team themselves, because they were asking about the whole quarterback and different players and trading George Pickens and stuff like that. That the team itself, the players, we're going to win a Super Bowl this year and every year. But that may not be the same mindset in the front office. Does that tell you that them themselves saw George Pickens trade as something that maybe downgraded their team?
I think truthfully, if you really believe that, then I wanted to see those players given the 110% effort, and at times last year you didn't see that. I see games where they, like the Baltimore game, where they just got bludgeoned against the run. They were guys that were making career decisions to move out of the way or to try to side saddle these guys and tackle them and let them drag them down the field. They wasn't putting their head in there trying to blow nobody up. They were not physical enough. And when you get trounced like that in a playoff game against your hated division rival, you should kind of look in the mirror and say, maybe we ain't as good as we think we are. Now, all these guys, the changes you mentioned earlier, it's guys that I think the Steelers let go. They didn't even offer a lot of them a contract at all. And they cleaned house of a lot of Kevin Colbert guys. And now they're having Con Weidel guys. And we're seeing a change. Somewhere in there, you got to do it. Now, Mike Tomlin and the front office, I think they have a mindset. We want to stay competitive while we're doing this. But a lot of times when you have to completely clean the cupboard, and they cleaned out the cupboard here, you're going to have a year where you ain't up to your normal standard. But as long as you're heading in the right direction and you're developing that young talent and you have a chance to become relevant again, hopefully you'll be picking a little bit earlier in some of these rounds. And not only do they got more picks next year, but maybe some of these picks will be earlier in the round, where you could get some guys you missed out on these last few years. Because this team needs more young talent, but they also need that right character culture fit. So again, I just look at it a little different than a lot of the fans do. And because I cannot stand the merry-go-round, this Ferris wheel of average mediocrity that the Steelers are trapped on.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think a lot of what, you were mentioning about Covert's guys was probably, I think a lot of that role is maybe they're getting a little bit desperate to stay relevant. They're picking late in drafts. And so now they got to take a little bit more risks on character guys.
Definitely.
And so that's kind of how we got ourselves in this situation.
Yep.
And they've cleaned that out. And like you mentioned, I think they've done really good, not just getting high quality draft players in these last few drafts with Omar Khan, but the character aspect of it as well. I think you're spot on when it comes to that analysis. And, I think that, I know there was a report out there and it was fake. I even fell for it. Something about Tomlin saying something about that the reason they didn't want Shedeur Sanders was because of the off the field
stuff. I've seen
stuff.
that. Yeah.
As fake as it was, I don't think it wasn't false.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I think that there's probably some truth there. I don't think a talent like him falls that many rounds and it not be because of some issues that maybe perhaps he was having in interviews or things of that nature. And so, they didn't fall for the trap this year. They could have drafted Shedeur Sanders in several rounds, and they didn't.
The rumor, again, this is rumor, but that his interview with the Giants was so bad that Sanders, his family, and the agent was talking about suing the NFL if they released it to the media. And so that's pretty bad. I mean, we've seen, some bad interviews and some terrible questions by GMs asking these young men some just, awful questions that I can't believe they even asked them. And then it's come out. So if whatever Sanders did or said or how he behaved in this interview was that bad, that says a lot. And it might explain why that he fell as far as he did. Because all these guys talk. All the scouts, they all talk to each other. And the GMs talk to each other. And if you develop a reputation, everybody's going to know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think he didn't help himself. He came up with his nickname, the legendary Shedeur Sanders. He hasn't done anything. And I don't think that type of stuff is really sitting well with anybody, especially like we've seen a lot of teams implode because of some high drama, off the field. There was also that clip there that was going around with Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and Shedeur was asking Cam to join him in a rap song, and he's like, "Nah, I don't do that. I want to be known as a football player." Yep. I mean, that's the reason why Cam Ward was selected first overall, in my opinion. He's got his mind right. He knows what he wants to do. He's got his eye on where he wants to be at, and he's got his mind on how to get there. You don't become.
Who would you rather have? I mean, I think the answer is obvious. I mean,
yeah.
And like you said, he was like, "No, I'm a football player. This is my focus. This is my life." If you look at your guys that are known for their work ethic at quarterback, your Mannings and your Bradys and guess what? That was their life. Yeah. And we've heard Ben, Big Ben, my favorite player, criticize that he had lots of other interests and he didn't devote as much time to physical fitness, game study, stuff of that nature. He was more of your backyard natural gunslinger, more of your Elway, Brett Favre type. But if you're getting ready to make a guy the number one pick in the whole draft, and he's going to be the face of your franchise, I know which guy I'd want.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the Steelers fan base have had their full share of of football players wanting to be rappers or musicians or TikTokers or whatever the case may be. Like
Yes.
the Steelers have had it all. They've had it all. And so you know, kind of transitioning off a little bit. The Steelers signed a running back. Trey, what was his last name?
Sermon.
It's Trey Sermon.
Yes.
What does that tell you? Who's not going to be on the roster come week one? I know a lot of people are thinking Cordell Patterson, but you know, signing a Trey Sermon when you have a Jalen Warren, you have a rookie. Do you think there's any concerns there as far as Jalen or Caleb Johnson's performance thus far that they went out and got another running back? Or do you think this is strictly maybe special teams in depth?
Well, I think it's part of it's Patterson. I do not expect. I'm surprised I'm shocked he's still listed on the roster. I mean, he was done last year. I mean, he had no burst. He could not develop. When he got up to top speed, you couldn't even tell he had accelerated. I mean, his days of great special team value as a kick returner is over. He said that he come to camp, he was never in great shape, but he always got in shape the first 2 weeks of camp. And then he got hurt, and he never was able to really get in shape. The problem is, as you get older, you got to stay in shape. You can't just get there in a week or two. And I think he's a wasted roster spot. I'll just be honest with you. Sermon is a guy that is a different type of runner. Johnson is a floater. He's a slasher. He floats out there. He's more Le'Veon Bell type. We know Warren's a little bowling ball with legs. He's the muscle hamster, whatever you want to call it. And then they got Gainwell, who is shorter too, also, but he is very good out of the backfield. Warren and him both can block, good at pass protection. But Sermon is the guy who can give him that power guy. And so he is a threat to make the roster. He can return a kick if necessary. And he's a good athlete. He really is. So, yeah, I think that the guy, odd man out, would definitely be a guy like Patterson, because the Steelers signed 2 running backs from that receiver camp. Rookie camp. One of them was Sermon, and it was another guy. I don't have the names in front of me right now, but they signed 2 running backs.
Yeah, you're right. I can't remember either.
Somebody here says Hurlman. Maybe it's pronounced Hurlman. Yeah. So I see that there was 2 running backs. I'm like, really? I'm like, wow. They're. I just think it says that they're really committed to improving their rushing attack this year.
I think so too. I think that they are. I think Cordell Patterson is. I think the Steelers forgot he was on the team. They didn't wish him a happy birthday not too long ago. He was upset by it. How the Steelers will put out on Twitter when it's a player's birthday, they wish him happy birthday. They forgot Cordell Patterson. Apparently, he got all mad. I'm just. I think that's what it is more than anything. There was some soft tissue injuries that occurred throughout the season last year at the running back position. You want to have some strong depth there. You want to have some players that have been there throughout the entire offseason, knows the playbook, things of that nature. And also with the new special teams rules, you want to get somebody that either can return and or block and those type of things. And I like the signing. I think he's gonna be a good move for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially for some depth.
Oh, I do, and I like I keep looking at during the early videos and pictures, and looking at Harmon and Black, and I just get excited about that. I want to see that again. I want to see a Steelers offense, a defensive line that is just going to create havoc and just be a defense. You know what I'm saying? Just set that edge, set that front four, and teams just can't run the ball like they did at times last year. Mm-hmm. And I believe that they got them 2 keepers in Harmon and Black. I
do too. I'm excited about them. I think they're going to do wonders for the middle linebackers as well. I think they're going to keep them clean. The Steelers got some very athletic inside linebackers, and Cole Holcomb coming back is a huge plus too. If he could be
Fingers
what he
crossed.
was,
Fingers
yeah,
crossed.
yeah. If he can be what he was before he got hurt, which is a tall ask. That injury was pretty horrific. But if he can come back and be what he was before, I mean, the Steelers have a very athletic inside linebacker group that's going to be able to move back and forth. I like their physicality. I think they can tackle very well. I know that Patrick Queen had some issues last year, especially early on with tackling and things like that. But
Yes.
as the year progressed, I think he got a little bit more comfortable in the position. I wouldn't be surprised if the green dot got changed. Last year, Peyton Wilson was the backup green dot. If something would have happened to Patrick Queen and down the stretch, Peyton Wilson was going to be wearing the green dot. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up taking over in that position. I think I would like to see that. I think you're right on that aspect. Um, you know, the only news that's I think fixing to come out now is just the schedule here recently. Unless Aaron Rodgers signs, but
Yeah,
schedule should be coming out. When do you think the Steelers are going to play in Ireland? What's your prediction? You think it's going to be that September 28th game?
yeah, that's what and it does make sense. The only thing I'm concerned about if they do that, a lot of times, you get an early bye week.
Mm-hmm.
And I like mid-season buys. I do not like early season buys because especially physical teams in a physical division, you need that mid-season or later bye week. I believe because there's always guys that can really use that extra week by that point in the year. So, but at first I heard it was going to be the Packers, and the latest rumor, I guess it's the Vikings, right?
Yeah, the Vikings,
Yeah.
but the Vikings have been reported to be playing, I think, the Browns overseas. So
maybe
are they
2
going
weeks
to?
in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they shafted the Steelers last year with the schedule they gave them down the road. So
Yes.
I'm not surprised if they end up doing the same thing for to the Minnesota Vikings and make them play 2 international games. I wonder if they're probably going to be in 2 different countries too.
Well, but it's Europe's smaller, so I mean, it's
That's
like
true.
I think it's going to be like that. They could just stay over there, and and then so it might work that way. That's the rumor, but I hope to never see another. The Steelers got shafted on that schedule last year, and they were good enough to again be a little better than average, but when they were thrown into that, murderer's row, they did not have the talent or the capabilities to remain competitive during that stretch. And I hope this year that the NFL kind of makes up for it, and the Steelers has at least something in the middle of the pack, not the hardest schedule in the NFL.
Exactly, or the most craziest timing. I think they played 4 games in 18 days or something like
It was
that at one
crazy.
point.
Yeah.
It was insane how they were just like, oh, who cares about their health and safety? Let's just throw them back out there against the most physical teams in the league.
Yeah.
Back to back.
Yeah.
It was tough. It was tough. I think that the Steelers were going to play their schedule regardless, obviously, and they were going to play those teams. But sprinkle in one of those teams in the beginning of the year or something.
To have to play that many games right in the middle of it, you play the Chiefs on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man. So that's why you knew they had to have a winning record, one of the best records in the AFC at that point to still make the playoffs. And they did. They snuck in, but it just kept going downhill.
Yeah, it did. It really did. And the team was just kind of young in a lot of different places, especially with George Pickens and a lot of rookies on the offensive line that were starting to get beat down. So I expect a stronger finish this year. Needless to say. Last thing I'm going to ask you is how many prediction time? How many prime time games do you think the Steelers get? I think it's a maximum of 5. You think they hit 5?
I think the NFL would have loved for Rodgers to make his announcement before, but he waited. Because I guarantee you it would have been 5, the max, and had Rodgers come in. But now I'm going to say the Steelers get 4. Now we got to remember they have a massive fan base. Steelers and the Cowboys have massive fan base. And they always have great ratings when they're on TV. Even though the Steelers have not been very fun to watch for a while now, at least offensively, they still get good ratings. Because you either, kind of like Cowboys, people either love them or they hate them. So you tune in to see them win or you tune in to see them lose. So, but I'll say 4.
Does the international game count as a primetime game? It doesn't, right?
No.
Okay. So with that being said, I'm also going to agree with you with 4. I was going to say 5 if that counts as some sort of primetime game.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to get 4. I think by the end of it, I think at the end of the year, it'll probably be 5. I wouldn't
you think they'll get flexed into a
I think they'll get flexed, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up being, signs as the quarterback for the Steelers. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a flex as early as possible to get another one on there. But I think they're probably going in with 4 just to start off. But I think by the time it's all said and done, they would have played 5.
Yep, I agree. Yep.
And so we'll see. We'll see. It'll be an interesting year this year. We'll see if the Steelers play on Christmas again for the 3rd year in a row.
I hope not.
Yeah, me too.
They just ruined my Christmas last year.
They did. They definitely did. It was. The year before it was great. Trying to repeat
I should say they ruined it, but it was a very disappointing Christmas. It was very frustrating when you're having such a wonderful day.
That's true. That is true. Well, guys, that's all we got for you guys today. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Shannon, take us out, my man.